Operation New Blood has been released to the test server, and with it comes a new recruit rework and multiple balancing changes that will have a profound effect on the meta. So in today's video, I'll be doing a new and updated operator tier list, same as every other season. I'll be going in alphabetical order, and timestamp will be in the description for your viewing experience. Anyways, let's go ahead and get into the video. Now, the first operator we're going to be ranking on this tier list is going to be Ace, and Ace is a clear A tier operator. The reason for this is because he has a really strong gun in the form of the AK-12. His Selma charges are extremely strong for opening walls because of the fact that he can use his gadget to open them from range, and because of the fact that they open a wall a lot faster than Thermite. Ace is definitely the go-to operator for getting a hard wall open, and because of that, he has to go in the A tier because he is by definition good every round. However, the same thing cannot be said about the next operator, Amaru. Amaru's gadget, that being her grappling hook, is an extremely niche gadget. It allows you to go up hatches, and it also allows you to go through windows. It allows you to go up hatches extremely quickly, and it also allows you to go through windows extremely quickly. But as I'm sure you can tell, that is an extremely niche use case because you can only really get utility out of Amaru when you're using her for a rush strategy. And then on top of her gadget being extremely niche, the recent LMG rework that came in Operation Deadly Omen indirectly nerfed her because it made her movement speed a lot slower. And so for that reason, I'm going to be putting her in niche at best because I don't think I can justify putting her any higher than that. However, she still is pretty decent on specific maps like Cafe and Consulate. Now for Ashe, I think I'm going to be putting her up in A tier next to Ace. Ashe is another extremely strong operator because of the fact that her weapon, the R4C, is extremely strong. She's a 3-speed, and then on top of that, her 2 Ashe charges are extremely important for being able to deal with mirror windows, and they can also be used to clear other forms of bulletproof utility like maestro cams, deployable shields, or really anything else. So because her gadget is extremely versatile and she just has an amazing weapon loadout, I thought I had to put her in the A tier. Now our next operator, Blackbeard, is going to be our first operator to find themselves in the D tier. Blackbeard is going in the D tier for 2 main reasons. First of all, his gadget is fundamentally flawed. What I mean by this is Blackbeard's entire gadget revolves around denying headshots. And in a game where one-shot headshot is such an important mechanic, having an operator in the game that has the ability to deny that mechanic is fundamentally flawed. And then on top of that, Blackbeard just doesn't really bring much to his team. His weapons are really bad, he has very slow movement speed, and his secondary gadgets don't really make up for the fact that everything else about his kit is so lackluster. And so because of those 2 reasons, he has to go in the D tier. Now the next operator, Blitz, is going to be a very controversial placement. After the recent shield rework, Blitz has gotten a lot stronger, and so because of that, I think you're going to see a lot of people place him in completely different positions on the tier list. But for me personally, I feel like Blitz is a solid B tier operator. After the shield rework, Blitz did get stronger. Him being able to reload behind his shield is huge. Him being able to reload and throw smoke grenades behind his shield is huge because it allows him to stay a lot safer and prevent himself from taking as much chip damage. And also the nerf to impacts that recently occurred is a huge buff to Blitz because now one operator with impacts will no longer be able to kill him outright. However, the things holding Blitz back from going higher on this list is because of the fact that he struggles in situations where he's not rushing. If you're not using Blitz to actively get aggressive or to pull off a rush strategy, then you'd be better off picking Montagne in most situations. And so because of that, I'm going to be putting him in the B tier. He's still a really solid operator, but I just think Monty is better than him in almost every way. Now, another historically controversial placement on this operator tier list is Brava. A lot of players think Brava is a extremely good operator because of the fact that she can hack defender utility, and then a lot of people think that her gadget is extremely weak because of the fact that it's so easily countered by so many defensive operators. I used to be one of the people that fell into the latter option. I used to think that Brava was extremely bad because of the fact that she was countered by a ton of operators. However, as I've started to play her more and I've started to understand her gadget more and I've started to understand the best use cases for her, I'm starting to change my opinion on her. And so for that reason, in this tier list, I'm going to be putting her in the B tier. I do think Brava is a really solid pick against operators like Maestro, Aruni, Malusi, and pretty much any other operator with a bulletproof gadget that is hackable. However, since Brava's only good when the defense picks operators that she can hack, I had to put her in the B tier because she's by definition not good every round. Now move on to the next operator, Buck. I think it's clear that he is an A tier operator. Buck is one of the most well-rounded operators in the game. His underbarrel shotgun allows you to play vertically. He has a really good firearm in the form of the C8 assault rifle. He has access to a Gon 6 as a secondary option to deal with any form of bulletproof utility, and he has flashbangs or secondary hard breach charges depending on what you want to bring. Just an amazing operator all around, and I definitely think he's worthy of going in the A tier. Now the next operator, Capitao, he's going to be going in the top of B tier. Capitao is a pretty strong operator because of the fact that he has access to his fire bolts and smoke bolts. These bolts allow him to be extremely strong for pulling off a sight execute or for forcing defenders out of a position. And then on top of that, he has access to the Para 308 assault rifle, a very hard hitting but slow fire rate AR, and he has a Gon 6 as a secondary option to deal with bulletproof utility. And then for his secondary gadget selection, he has EMPs and secondary hard breach charges. All of this combines to make Capitao an extremely well-rounded operator. However, because of the fact that Wamai and Warden so heavily counter him, I am going to be putting him in the B tier spot, because if you see those two operators, you might want to consider switching off of Capitao for a different operator. Now moving on to the next operator, Deimos. He is always an operator that I've struggled to rank. However, I think in this video, I'm going to be putting him towards the top of B tier. The reason why Deimos is always an operator that I've struggled to rank is because of the fact that his gadget, if you know how to use it and you have a 5 stack to work with, can be an extremely strong gadget. Because at the click of a button, you can give live intel on one defender's location to your entire team. However, the rest of Deimos's kit isn't that good. And if you're not in a 5 stack, his gadget falls off significantly. And so because of the fact that Deimos doesn't really function well outside of the 5 stack environment, I'm going to have to be putting him in B tier. Now, the first operator that we're going to be seeing going in S tier is going to be Dokkaebi. Dokkaebi is the definition of an overpowered operator. Her gadget at the click of a button allows her to deny the entire enemy team access to their camera system, and it causes all of their phones to produce a loud audio cue that allows her to figure out the position of any nearby defenders. And then on top of that, she has the passive ability to hack a dead defender's phone to then get access to the entire defense's camera system, which then allows her to use things like Echo cameras, Maestro cameras, and Valkyrie cameras against the defense. This, combined with the fact that in her loadout, she has access to a pretty solid DMR, a Gon 6 secondary weapon, and EMPs, flashbangs, or smokes, makes her probably the most well-rounded operator in this game. I know Ubisoft is planning on nerfing her in the future, and rightfully so, because she is probably the most overpowered operator in the game right now. Now moving past Dokkaebi, we have an operator that's gotten a lot stronger recently, and that is Finka, and I'm going to be putting her at the middle of B tier. The reason why Finka has gotten a lot stronger recently is because of the fact that she indirectly got buffed by the shield rework, because now shields are a lot stronger and people are picking shields more often. And in Finka's ability to heal her teammates allows her to heal away chip damage from explosives that your shield operators may get dealt. This allows Finka to help her shield operator teammates stay alive longer, and it also allows her to buff her shield operator teammates with a faster ADS speed, allowing operators like Monty or Blitz to pull off plays that they otherwise wouldn't be able to. And then on top of that, since Finka has access to one of the best LMGs in the game that just recently got buffed, she honestly is in a pretty decent state right now. And so for that reason, I'm going to be putting her in B tier. She's definitely not an operator that you want to be running all the time, because if you're not running a shield operator, the situations where her gadget will get a lot of utility are few and far between. But if you are bringing a shield operator, it is almost always going to be a good idea to bring a Finka. Moving on to Flores, he is going to be another operator joining Finka in the B tier, and I'm going to be putting him at the top of B tier. The reason why Flores is going at the top of B tier is because of the fact that he is an extremely strong operator for dealing with bulletproof utility. Flores' drones can deal with deployable shields, bulletproof cameras, Maestro cameras, barbed wire, Jaeger ADSs, and pretty much anything else that you want to deal with. However, the one thing that's holding Flores back from going higher on this list is because of the fact that he is easily countered just by bringing a mute. If the enemy team runs a mute, Flores is going to have a very hard time getting to those crucial pieces of utility that he needs to get rid of. And since the defense only really needs to bring one operator to stop him in his tracks, I have to put him in the B tier. Now next up with Fuze, he's going to be going in the C tier for obvious reasons. Fuze's gadget is extremely niche. The only times you can get utility out of Fuze's gadget is when you have the ability to play vertically above the bomb site. And even when you can, Fuze's gadget will very rarely end up getting you kills. The only thing that Fuze's gadget is really useful for is clearing all of the utility inside of the bomb site. So blowing up Jaeger ADSs, blowing up deployable shields, blowing up Cade claws, things like that. However, since Fuze is a 3-speed, him placing his gadget down is extremely loud, and his gadget can just be shot by a defender with a quick reaction time, and he's also left extremely vulnerable anytime he uses his gadget. He really doesn't have much going for him. Yeah, and so for all of those reasons, he has to go in the C tier. Now for Fuze's Spetsnaz counterpart, Glaz, we're going to be putting him in the bottom of B tier. Glaz is an operator that excels with specific strategies. If you bring a Capitao, or you bring a Sens, or you bring just a ton of smoke grenades alongside a Glaz, you can pull off a lot of ridiculous plays. However, if the defense just picks one specific operator, your entire strategy will crumble apart. And that operator is Warden. Warden just completely destroys any sort of strategy revolving around Glaz instantaneously, because Warden, just like Glaz, can also see through the smoke. So if the Warden player is smart, they can kill the Glaz and whatever other operators are hiding behind your smoke grenades that you're throwing throughout the bomb site. And since Glaz is so heavily countered by that one operator, I have to put him at the low B tier. If Warden wasn't picked that often, or if Warden just didn't exist, Glaz would probably be a lot higher on this list though. Now, Gridlock is going to be another operator joining Glaz in the B tier. However, I'm going to be putting her on the higher end of B tier. The reason why Gridlock belongs here is because of the fact that her track stingers are extremely strong for flank watch. She has a secondary shotgun at her disposal, smoke grenades or EMPs as her secondary gadget option, and she has the F90 AR, which is a pretty solid assault rifle. There are downsides to Gridlock, like the fact that she is extremely loud when moving around the map, and the fact that a drone can pretty much do her gadget's job. However, since she brings so much secondary utility, and since her gadget also makes a ton of noise, allowing you to mask the sound of a plant, I do think she belongs in the top of B tier, because for a sight execute later in the round, she is pretty strong for that. Speaking of a sight execute, our next operator, Grim, is even better at this function. And so for that reason, he's going to be going at the top of A tier. Grim used to be one of the worst operators in the game. However, after Ubisoft has reworked him multiple times, his Bs are now extremely strong for pushing a position. If you know an enemy is on a power position like rafters, shooting some Bs up there to kind of apply some pressure and to also allow you to just have the exact location of that defender can be useful for getting a nade kill or for just shooting them through the wall. However, the main function of Grim's gadget is for late round sight executes. If you dump Grim's Bs into the bomb site on common positions, you'll very easily be able to find the remaining defenders inside of the bomb site and hopefully be able to take an advantageous gunfight. His Bs also allow him to cover a plant once the plant is down. He can shoot Bs inside of the bomb site on all of the doorways, and then whenever a defender goes to rotate to counter the diffuser, they'll have to reveal their position to Grim, which obviously is going to give him a huge advantage. And so for all of those reasons, he has to go up here in the A tier. Now for Hibanna, I'm going to be putting her in the top of B tier. Hibanna is a solid pick in pretty much any round. Her gadget is strong for opening hatches, and her gadget can open walls from a distance. She has access to a really strong primary assault rifle, and she has access to a machine pistol secondary option and flashbang. So for a hard breacher, Hibanna is pretty good. However, since her gadget is slow and cumbersome, and it can't be used effectively on walls, I have to put her in the B tier. She's not useful every round, but she is useful on rounds where you need to get a hatch open. Now for our next operator, Iana, she is going to be going in the top of A tier because her ability to have access to endless drones is strong on almost every round. And on top of that, she gets access to the ARX assault rifle and the G36C assault rifle as her two primary options, which allows her to be a really strong entry fragger for her team. And so endless drones and a good gun just makes her an absolute powerhouse for solo queue and just for helping out her team take map control. You really can't go wrong with picking Iana, and so I had to put her in the A tier. However, the same cannot be said about IQ, which she is going to be going in the middle of C tier. The reason why IQ finds herself at this position is because of the fact that her gadget is only really useful against three main operators, I would say. Those operators being Valkyrie, Echo, and Solace. However, Valkyrie cameras can be pretty easily droned if you just take your time. Echo is pretty much never picked, and even if he is, he's not very strong. And then Solace just recently got nerfed with the introduction of Operation New Blood, meaning that her pick rate is probably going to decrease, and her strength has definitely gone down. And so for those reasons, I'm going to be putting IQ low on this list. If the meta starts shifting into a more trap heavy or intel heavy meta, we could see IQ start to resurface, but for right now, I still think she's a pretty niche pick at best. Now for Jackal, he's going to be going in the lower A tier. Jackal has always been an operator holding up the A tier for me. He has access to a secondary shotgun, which is pretty huge for opening soft surfaces if he needs to. His pings are strong for applying pressure on roamers, and his ability to just see footprints of the defenders is strong for just tracking people down on the map. And then on top of all of that utility, he has two really strong primary weapons in the form of the PDW and the C7E, and he has smoke grenades as a secondary gadget option. This makes Jackal have one of the most well-rounded kits out of all the roam clears, and so I think it's pretty clear why he goes in the A tier position. However, Callie is not nearly as well-rounded, and so she is going to be going in the bottom of C tier. The reason why Callie is going this low on this list is pretty obvious. Her only primary weapon being a sniper rifle that sometimes doesn't even one-shot, and her gadget only really being useful for dealing with bulletproof utility makes her an extremely hard operator to recommend for pretty much any scenario. Now next up, Lion, he's going to be going in the A tier right next to Jackal. Lion's gadget, the E1D, may not be super strong nowadays, but what he loses in gadget, he makes up for it in secondary utility and his loadout. He has access to the V308 assault rifle and the 417 DMR, which are both really solid. And he has flashbangs or frag grenades as his secondary gadget options, which are arguably the two strongest secondary gadgets an attacker can bring. So if you pick Lion, you most likely will get utility out of him in almost every round you bring him. Then moving on to Maverick, we're going to be putting him in the middle of B tier. Maverick has fallen off a lot over the years, and that's just because his gadget is extremely slow to use. Opening a wall with Maverick takes a while because you have to completely blow towards the top and the bottom of a wall, which takes time and resources that you could be using to take map control at some other spot. However, what makes up for this is the fact that Maverick can basically just avoid any form of breach denial utility the defense has. If the defense is bringing a Cade, doesn't matter. If the defense is bringing a Tuberal, doesn't matter. You can literally just Maverick open a wall for free and the defense really can't do anything about it. The only thing they can try to do is either peek the Maverick holes as Maverick is making them, so that way they can pick up a kill on him, or they can try to lob explosives through the hole to deal damage to Maverick and hopefully kill him. But since his gadget can just avoid defender utility entirely, I do think he belongs in the B tier. Next up from Montagne, he is another operator that's placement has changed drastically over the past few seasons, and that is because the shield rework has completely changed the game for him, just like with Blitz. And so for that reason, I'm going to be putting him all the way up in the top of A tier. Montagne is strong in a lot of situations. He can be useful for forcing a defender out of a power position. He can be useful for helping his team roam clear. And he can also be useful late in the round for getting a plant down because he can cover his back with his shield while putting the plant down. And he was already strong in these situations before, but he's now even stronger with the shield rework. Now, unlike Montagne, Nokk is actually an operator that's fallen off a lot over the past year or so. And so for that reason, I'm going to be putting her in the bottom of C tier. The reason why Nokk has fallen off a lot is because of the fact that her gadget no longer makes her quieter when it's active. If you don't know, Nook's gadget used to allow her to be quiet like Caveira when her gadget was active, meaning that footsteps would be quieter and any other movements that she did. This combined with the fact that Nook's gadget allowed you to hide from the cameras gave her the ability to make sneaky plays that other operators couldn't do. It basically made her the ultimate lurking operator. However, with that ability removed recently, she's only really useful for sneaking past cameras. And her only ability being a gadget that allows her to sneak past cameras is really not strong enough to justify the operator slot. And that is why you haven't seen teams picking Nokk very much recently, and it's also why her pick rate's been dropping significantly. Hopefully she'll get a buff in the near future, but for right now, she's really not that good. Now, next up, we have Nomad, and Nomad's going to be going in the bottom of B tier. The reason why Nomad's going this low on this list is because of the fact that her gadget, decent for stopping flanks, it really isn't something you can rely on. And that is because defenders can just crouch up under an air jab and shoot it off of the door frame or wherever else you have it. This means that if you just place an air jab on a flank without actually putting a drone there to support it, your air jab can very easily be denied and you can still be caught off guard by a flank. This is why in most situations I would still pick a Gridlock over a Nomad, because not only are you getting 4 track stingers instead of 3 air jabs, but you're also getting more secondary utility and you're also getting a gadget that will more consistently stop flanks compared to Nomad. So in any situation where you find yourself leaning towards Nomad, I would probably recommend you pick Gridlock instead, but Nomad is still a solid choice because she does have flashbangs and she does have a decent gun. Now moving on to the next operator, we have Osa, and Osa is going to be going in the bottom of A tier. Osa is another operator that is pretty good every round you pick her. And the reason for this is because her shields are useful for taking map control and for also getting a plant down. You can use Osa's shields to walk into a bomb site, you can place one of her shields in front of you, and then you can turn around and just go for a plant with the protection of a shield right behind you. However, Osa does have some downsides, and that is the fact that she is heavily countered by any sort of explosive. If the enemies bring impact grenades or nitro cells, it really doesn't matter. She's going to be in for a world of hurt because as soon as she places down a shield, it's just going to immediately get exploded. To make up for this, she does get primary weapons unlike the other shield operators, so she has access to the 5.56 AR and the PDW, and to top it all off, she gets access to secondary EMPs, which once again allows her to support her team by helping to get a wall open or by supporting the plant once again. So generally, the biggest downside to Osa is the fact that explosives easily counter her and the fact that her gadget isn't really strong early in the round. But I still think if you know what you're doing with Osa and you play her right, she can be a really solid choice in your lineup in almost every scenario. The same thing can be said about Ram. Ram, just like Buck, is another extremely strong vertical play operator. Her buggy drones can open a ton of surface area on floors. And since they open floors so quickly, you can get behind them and actually pick up free kills as they're opening the floor. Her drones do make a lot of noise and they can be countered by just one simple impact, but still, her having access to 3 of these drones and still having flashbangs, smoke grenades, and the R4C primary weapon at her disposal just makes her an overall well-rounded operator. Now that cannot be said about Sens, which is why they are going to be going in the D tier. Sens' smoke wall gadget just isn't that strong. Their walls can cover a large surface area, but generally a smoke grenade can get that same job done. And unlike smoke grenades, Sens' gadget has the downside of being countered by explosives. So if the defense throws impacts or nitro cells at Sens' walls, they will disappear, allowing them to pick up a free kill on anyone on the other side of the wall. This, combined with the fact that Sens' loadout is very bad, makes them a very niche operator at best, and I would argue that they desperately need a rework. Ubisoft needs to go back to the drawing board on their gadget and find some way to buff them in a meaningful way, and to also provide them with better secondary utility so that they can better support their primary gadget option. Now for Sledge, he's going to be going in the top of B tier. And the reason why I haven't put Sledge any higher is because of the fact that Sledge is only really useful in rounds where you're going to be doing a lot of vertical play. Sledge is a slow operator with a gadget that leaves him extremely vulnerable. And the only thing he really has to make up for it is the fact that he has access to frag grenades as a secondary gadget option. But considering he's trying to compete with operators like Ram or Buck, who both have better secondary gadgets than him and better weapons than him, I don't really see how I could justify putting him any higher than the B tier. Ram and Buck just outclass him in almost every way. Now for the newly classified attacking recruit called Striker, I'm going to be putting him in the middle of B tier. And the reason for this is because the only thing he really brings to the team is 2 secondary gadgets. This does mean that Striker can bring things like secondary EMPs and secondary hard breach charges, which can allow him to get hatches open all by himself. And it also allows him to bring frag grenades and flashbangs, or smoke grenades and frag grenades, which can allow him to just dump the bomb site with utility. However, getting an additional secondary gadget slot in place of an actual gadget is going to be a tough selling point. I think there are a lot of other operators in the game that you'd be better off picking over a Striker depending on your use cases. And since generally secondary gadgets on the attack aren't as strong as defender secondary gadgets, I don't think Striker is going to be nearly as much of a hit as the defending version Sentry is going to be. But we'll just have to wait and see once the recruits hit the live build for us to truly get an idea of how strong they'll actually be. Now, next up, Thatcher. He's going to be going in the top of B tier. The reason why Thatcher isn't going any higher is because with the advent of secondary EMPs being added to the game, the situations where you should be picking a Thatcher over those choices is pretty rare. Most of the time, if you need EMPs desperately on the attack, you can get away with picking someone like a Gridlock for their secondary EMPs, or Grim, or Osa, or Montagne, or even Dokkaebi. And when you're picking those operators for their secondary EMPs, you also get their gadget on top of that. Whereas with Thatcher, the only thing he really brings to his team is those EMPs, because his secondary gadgets are only really claymores and breaching charges. And so in my experience, I don't really find myself needing EMPs so badly that I'm willing to give up an operator slot just to bring Thatcher's EMPs specifically. I'd rather just bring secondary EMPs in most situations, or just bring a Twitch or some other operator to deal with the utility I'm trying to get rid of. But don't get me wrong, Thatcher is still strong. His EMPs have a wide radius, and since they're EMPs, he counters a large variety of operators. So you can't really go wrong with picking him in a round. It's just I would rather pick other operators than Thatcher in most situations. Now, another operator joining Thatcher in the B tier is going to be Thermite. The reason why Thermite is finding himself this low on this list is because of the fact that Ace basically just does his job better. The reason why Thermite is finding himself this low on this list is because of the fact that Ace basically just does his job better. Ace has a better gun, his gadget can open walls from range, which Thermite cannot do, and his gadget can open walls quicker than Thermite. The only thing that Thermite really has going for him is the fact that his secondary gadgets are a lot better than Ace's, and the fact that his gadget can open bigger holes in a wall than Ace. But that isn't really enough to justify picking him in most situations. The only time you're going to want to be picking Thermite is when you're opening an outside wall, because the size of the wall will really matter at that point. But for interior walls, you're better off picking Ace in 99% of situations. Now for the next operator, Twitch, I'm going to be putting her in the bottom of A tier. Recently, I've been picking Twitch a lot more, and I've been practicing her F2 recoil a lot, and I've been getting really used to her. And honestly, I can say that she's pretty strong in almost every round you pick her. The reason for this is because her drones counter pretty much any form of electronic utility the defense can bring, and she has smoke grenades and access to, like I said, the F2, one of the strongest ARs in the game, if you can control its recoil. And if you can't, the 417 DMR is still a really good replacement. And like I said earlier, if you find yourself needing to pick EMPs, most of the time bringing a Twitch will be better off for you because you can get more utility per drone, because of the fact that you can get rid of more utility, and because of the fact that you get 4 drones on Twitch, which means you can drone a lot of areas out for your team. Now, the next operator we're going to be discussing is the second and final operator going in S tier, and that is Ying. Ying is definitely worthy of the S tier position. Her Candelas are extremely busted right now. She has access to 4 of them. They can blind defenders extremely quickly, and her having access to smoke grenades as her secondary option allows her to set up a side execute for her team extremely easily. The only thing that I can think of that kind of holds Ying back is the fact that her primary weapons aren't the best, but the rest of her loadout is just so strong that she has to go up here in the S tier position. I hope Ubisoft can either buff Warden significantly so that way she at least has a super strong counter, or they can find some way to rebalance her so that way she's on a more even playing field with the rest of the R6 roster. Now, after Ying, we have Zofia, and Zofia is going to be going at the top of A tier, and that's for obvious reasons. She's basically just Ashe, but better. She has access to 2 impact grenades just like Ashe, but she also has access to 2 concussion grenades, which can allow her to burn ADSs or to just face check rooms and to stun defenders in power positions, which these stuns can also be used to do things like counter a bandit trick because it forces a defender to stop any animation they're in the process of doing. This, combined with the fact that Zofia has really strong primary weapons, just makes her an overall well-rounded operator that can be used for entry fragging or just supporting the team. And now moving on to the final operator, we have Zero. And Zero is going to be going in the middle of C tier for me. Zero has always been an operator that I put really low on tier list, and he's always been an operator that a lot of people disagree with me on. However, the reason why Zero is going so low on this list is because his 4 cameras are extremely obvious because of the fact that their light is extremely bright, and they produce a lot of noise when deployed, meaning that a defender can very easily tell where a camera is deployed inside of the bomb site or really anywhere on the map. The only things that Zero really has going for him is the fact that he has a Gone 6 secondary hard breach charges and arguably the best AR in the game in the form of the SC3000. But good guns and good secondary gadgets doesn't really make up for a lackluster gadget, and so for that reason I'm going to be putting him in the C tier. I really do think that Zero is an extremely niche pick, and you should only be picking him for very specific strategies or very specific lineups. Anyways, that wraps up today's tier list. As always, this video is strictly my opinion, and if you disagree, feel free to leave your takes in the comments down below. If you enjoyed today's video, I make these content just like this twice a week, so go subscribe to the channel and follow me on Twitter if you don't want to miss the next upload. If you want to watch another video just like this one, I'll be popping up on your screen right now that I'm sure you'll all enjoy. I'll see you next time, friends, and peace.